Welcome to Brandstorm, the podcast that talks to the people behind America's brands. I'm Dan Trzynski, president of Platypus Advertising and Design.
And I'm Nancy Christopher, PR director at Platypus. Our guests today have been podcasting with us for nearly 2 years. Mary Motiff is the director of tourism for Bayfield County, which is located in northern Wisconsin on the southern edge of Lake Superior. And Pam King is the executive director of the Grafton Area Chamber of Commerce, and it's located just north of Milwaukee. Both have been using podcasting to share digital content about the goings-on in their communities. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you.
Hello to both of you.
Hello.
So, Pam, I'm going to start with you. What's the name of your podcast, and how's it going for you? How have your podcasts been received?
Our podcasts are called Getaway to Grafton, and so far we've had great response. They are the envy of all of our peers in our area, actually. To say that we started and are doing podcasts to promote tourism is something very unique, and we're really happy to be the first in our region to be using this technology to try and get our message across. So I think they've been very well received by those who listen, but certainly podcasting is a relatively new technology for a lot of travelers. People in my age group, older than millennials, don't really understand podcasting yet. When I'm in meetings, I say, take your phone out and look at the icon that says podcast and tune in, and then they all get hooked. But just trying to guide them to that, it has been a learning curve, but very well received so far.
Yeah, I think it's just getting them to accept the technology because that generation is very much talk radio listener too. And once they start realizing it, I even had my mom listen to one, and she's like, well, this is just like a talk show. And I'm like, yeah.
Right.
It is a talk show.
Yeah.
It is. So you wonder, where did the word podcast come from? So I think that's the hard thing, is how do you put that into common terms? And so saying a radio show is really
almost
helpful.
Easier, more understandable. Yes. Mary, how about you? What's the name of your podcast?
Our podcast is Bayfield County Wild. And it has also been well received. And I would echo what Pam said about being the envy of our neighbors. I think it's something new and different, and people in the industry are taking a look and a little jealous that we jumped in and are doing this. And I'm getting questions about it from others. So I think others are considering maybe getting into doing a podcast. And I just have to say, it really helps when our guests really make an effort to share it with their audience, definitely, as far as, how well each episode is received. So I think that'll just keep improving.
Yeah, that's true. I think we live and die with sharing. So,
yeah.
It's so important. People don't realize, it doesn't just magically go out there. You really have to share it with people you want to hear it. And you can be very targeted. And I think that's a good thing about podcasting.
Yeah.
Right. And the more it catches on, the better that we'll get.
As destination marketing organization leads, Mary, I'm going to start with you first. Give me your best elevator pitch about Bayfield County, where it is, what you can do there, and then we'll follow up with Pam in Grafton.
Okay, sure. So Bayfield County is at the top of Wisconsin on the edge of Lake Superior. We're the second biggest county in the state, and half of our land is in public ownership. And so we just have so many amazing natural assets to enjoy up here, including 7 national designations. It's the home of the Apostle Islands National Lakeshore, which is a set of 21 islands and some mainland sea caves, which a lot of people know in the wintertime as the ice caves. It's just an amazing place to be, and it's far away from a lot of big populations. And so it's challenging to get people to come here, but when they get here, they never want to leave.
And we call it Bayfield County Wild, not because it's a wild place to go. It's because with all that public land.
Be.
Well, I guess it could be.
Depends on how wild you want to get.
But there's all that wildlife and geographical wonders up there.
Exactly. It's a great way to connect with nature and with each other.
Yeah. Okay, Pam.
Grafton, Wisconsin, is located in southeastern Wisconsin. We're 20 miles north of Milwaukee, which certainly in and of itself is one of the draws why people want to come to Grafton and stay in Grafton, because we are so close to and on the eastern corridor of I-43. So we are that midway point between perhaps Chicago and Green Bay, or on the way to Door County, or even on the way to Bayfield County. That's certainly, we're right there on the I-43 corridor. So that's one of our draws for sure. We like to consider ourselves to be the heart of the county. So many people come to Grafton because it is centrally located, and you can stay and play and visit many great opportunities around us. But in Grafton itself, we have a lot of great things to come and see. We're a retail hub. Some of our claims to fame seem a little corny, but we have the first Costco in the state of Wisconsin, which to us is a very big deal. We have the first Meijer in the state of Wisconsin, also a big deal. And when you come to Grafton on a Saturday or Sunday, you're astounded at the population growth over the weekend, just in the retail side of things. But on the natural resource side, we're centrally located on the Interurban Trail, which is a beautiful biking, hiking, cross-country skiing trail that traverses the entire county and connects to Milwaukee trails and also Sheboygan County trails. So that's certainly at least a 3-season trail. Our claim to fame in music is that we're the home of blues recording artistry. And so while it's a very well-hidden secret because it happened in the early 1920s when diversity certainly wasn't something you boasted about in Wisconsin, actually where our office is located was the Interurban Trail Railroad Station. Recording artists would come from Chicago, get off the bus train and walk to what was then a chair factory and a recording studio. They would record. They would stay there overnight. They would walk back to the train and go right back to Chicago. People didn't know they were here, but certainly it was important recording that happened in our community. And a lot of our downtown architecture reflects that now. And so we have a Paramount Plaza that's shaped like a grand piano and has keys that are a walk of fame for blues recording artists. And we try to highlight that in any way we can. We're also a part of the Mississippi Blues Trail. So when you look at a map of that trail in the United States, there are several points in southern United States. There's one in Chicago, there are 2 in Wisconsin, and one is Grafton, and the other is Port Washington.
Wow.
That's really neat. So how do you use podcasting to position the Grafton area?
Well, I think there's a couple strategies we've tried from start to finish. You know, we just completed what we would like to call season 1. So we've done 13 episodes. We're going to call that season 1. Initially, what we were trying to do was to try and get our own community to see value in what we were doing. So we really focused on locals and local businesses to have them understand it and then understand how to share it so that we could grow our audience intrinsically from inside out. So that was the start. We focused on events we were doing. We've tried to work with our neighboring communities to coordinate and promote the other assets we have in the community. So we had leaders from our Ozaukee County Tourism Council come in and talk about different festivals, different assets, different resources that are available throughout the county. Also just try and talk about the great things in Grafton and why you want to come. As we spoke a little earlier, the biggest challenge is to have our guests share what they're doing, share what they're talking about, both on air and then through social media and through their resources. It's wonderful when we have someone who has 5,000 to 7,000 followers on Facebook. If they would share it one time, that reach is phenomenal. Sure. But just trying to walk them through that, talk them through that, beg them through that is really the challenge we face.
How about you, Mary?
So there are so many amazing things about this area. It's really hard to communicate it to the public. And so we use the podcast to really dive in deep on little pieces of that so that we can explain things and really get people interested in the backstory about some of the really cool things that are happening up here. And we actually divide our podcast into 3 segments. And so I usually ramble on about a topic in the first segment. And I say that kind of jokingly.
No, it is.
But,
I know.
but I talk about something that's topical for that month. We do a monthly podcast, and then we interview a guest about a very specific thing in the middle. And then I talk about all the amazing events that are happening that month in the 3rd segment. And then we do a couple of business highlights in between the segments. And that format has worked really well. I'm in the process of thinking about changing up some things in our podcast that maybe will freshen it up a little bit and just kind of refocus and regroup a little. Not any major changes, but I think it's important to evaluate as you go and, get feedback and tweak things to just keep them fresh and new. And so we're looking at making a little bit of change. And it's just a great way to communicate all these details that you can't do any other way. I can't take out an ad, a print ad, or even a digital ad that can begin to explain the Red Cliff powwow.
Yeah, the detail, right.
Exactly.
So it's a really, really useful tool for us.
Mary, you co-host your podcast besides having guests on it. How does that help you? Does that make it easier?
Yes, it helps to be able to bring things up during the interview that I'm familiar with, that I know would be of interest to the audience if the guest doesn't bring that up. but it ties in really well. And
Right.
so just to be able to jump in with little tidbits of information that, Nancy may not know because she hasn't lived here for 14 years like I have.
Right.
Yeah, we should probably mention full disclosure. I am your co-host, so
Right.
and I have thick skin, Mary. So if something you don't like, it's okay to say.
Right. Right.
No,
Now's your
it's
time
not
to review Nancy.
No, I didn't say that.
It's not anything that I don't like, but it's just trying to think through. I wish I could get more feedback from people on the podcast directly, other than knowing that people are listening. So bring it on, people. Listen to Bayfield County Wild and let me know what you think.
And Pam, just to give you a sample, if you haven't listened to either one of them, Mary does co-host her podcast with Nancy. Pam is not the host; she's the executive director of the chamber, but she has someone in her department.
Right. So I'm extremely fortunate. We have a tourism promotion coordinator who works with us and who has experience in communications and broadcasting. I, as you certainly can tell, ramble a lot.
You're doing fine.
Don't have that skill. So it's great to have someone who has the energy and excitement to be on the radio or on the podcast. I think it changes things a lot. I think it's more exciting and I think it's more fun. I think it works well for us because this is Annalise's job. This will be her focus. And so learning about tourism, helping to promote, not only is it a way for her to share what she knows, it's a way for her to learn more, to do better, do her job. Selfishly, it's solving two things for me. So she's learning every day when she's interviewing people. There's great return on that. The challenge on that, however, is I too have been in my job and been in my community for a long time. And so after a recording, I don't want to be that person who says, oh, that's not really the history of that. We should have changed that. Because sometimes guests say the wrong things. Things just come out the way they come out. And it's just going to happen sometimes that we don't have the most accurate or all of the minute details that I might know, but it's okay. It's all about the general picture and the big picture, and who cares who started the event. It's about who's perpetuated it, how has it continued, how has it lasted and withstood the test of time kind of thing. So we've got a 40-year Christmas parade that we talk about, and the people who've been involved in it that we call in to be a part of our podcast are amazing, and they're phenomenal volunteers, and they don't know every bit and piece, but that's okay. And I don't think I need to be the correction in every one of them. I think it's great that everyone has that.
And Pam, we have this wonderful tool called editing.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, and that's the beauty of show notes, too.
Yes.
You can always add a little note saying, just FYI.
Definitely.
The real history is.
Yeah. I think it makes it easier for me to have someone else, in that we're fortunate to be located 40 minutes from Platypus. So the idea that someone from my office can come to Platypus with our guests to see this amazing facility and be a part of this, that gives us so much credibility. I think what Mary's doing up north is amazing, and I think that's pretty cool to think about, that you're remotely recording and getting an amazing product. But for us, really, the value of bringing people into this site has been wonderful, and having a staff member who can come and do that, and so I'm not here for the 3 to 4 hours it takes to produce the end game is great.
You brought up the equipment. Mary, you've invested in equipment up there. Sometimes Wi-Fi can be a little spotty. Tell us about the equipment and what you're able to do with it.
Sure. So the equipment that I have allows me to record my track separately on site. So we actually don't have to rely on Wi-Fi for that part of it. And then I upload that file for editing, and you guys work your magic down there to bring it into the mix. And it works best when I have all of my equipment set up in the little mini studio that I set up and take down each month. And then the guest meets me here at one of our rooms in the courthouse, and we have that all set up. I can also go on site, which I just did for this last episode, and record on the one piece of equipment that has a mic that I can put on it. And the quality is actually still very good. And I still have the ability to record it without having to rely on Wi-Fi, which is huge. Back in the early days, before I had the equipment that I do now, we were reliant on Wi-Fi and cell connections. And so the quality
bad headphones and
exactly. And I just realized today that one of those sets of headphones actually doesn't work. And that's why we were having so many problems.
Wow. There you go.
There we go. So yeah, it's been an evolution, and this equipment, and it wasn't a huge investment, but it was a smart investment. It's just amazing the difference that it makes.
I would say we too have done a few remotes. We have the equipment. I don't think it cost us $200 total to get what we needed. I don't even think it was $100 total when it came down to it. And, so we have done some recording with our guests who aren't able to make the journey here. But you guys make it really easy. So that's the challenge. I mean, I think anybody can make a podcast in their basement, but what
making
happens
it
here
sound good.
makes it all the better.
Yeah.
So, how do you think podcasting compares to other tactics that you use to communicate with your visitors?
I think Mary alluded to it somewhat. We can't advertise in a newspaper or a magazine and get the message across so comprehensively the way that we can in podcasts. So that's one definite advantage. I think that radio advertising, while it's probably somewhat effective, is ridiculously expensive and is 30 seconds of time and then it's gone and you can't get back to it.
And your audience is limited.
Absolutely. And so the library that we're able to create, the longevity of the product that we're creating isn't just a one-time flash in the pan.
Right. You're building content that sticks.
Definitely. Again, I think that it's the best bang for our buck once we figure out the challenge of getting people to get more and more focused on, hey, I should get back to that podcast of Getaway to Grafton. I should listen to that more, or I should go back to that one. I heard about the Giro to Grafton last year. I should go back. I'm sure it's not that different this year. So I think the challenge of getting people to listen and continue to listen is one we can overcome, because relative to the cost and the effort to do all of those other advertising opportunities, there's nothing like this.
Yeah. You both have done a good job of, now Mary, you've been at it a couple of years now, right? And Grafton's been a year's worth. Yeah. You're starting to build that content library now to where the first episode that comes off the top of my head for you, Mary, was, the dog sled guy. I just was captivated by that. So, I mean, you can reuse that, because the whole experience of running your own dog sled team is kind of evergreen.
Right.
So that when winter comes along again, you can push that out through all your other social media without having to really re-record it, re-explain it.
Exactly. I have an intern this summer, which is awesome. And so I had her go through our website page with all those show notes and episodes and break it down. So each one has its own menu now. We don't say episode 1, episode 2. We don't date it. We just have the topic.
Right.
And so you can just scan through and see what all the topics are. And if something is of interest, hopefully people will just go ahead and click on it and listen.
Boat ride the Apostle Islands, you can just find that a conversation that may be 7 months old, but it's still relevant.
Exactly. The other thing I was going to say is that the people who are listening to an episode of our podcast are invested and they care about the content. And so they're more likely to be actively engaged with our destination and come back and visit, or maybe even move here someday because they fall in love with it. It's a better quality connection with that audience.
I never thought of the economic development side of that. That's a really good point. I mean, you should be pushing that out to your EDCs and your thing, saying, okay, here are some tools that you can, if they're trying to draw businesses to the area or new residents to the area, that they can find information about what goes on.
Quality of life is huge. And honestly, I just found out the other day, we have a small little festival called the Port Wing Plein Air Art Festival. And it's where artists come and set up an easel out in nature and they paint, and then they have an exhibition at the end and sell their paintings. And that little event is the reason that 5 people have moved here and to Port Wing, this tiny little town, over the past
Population's
8 or 9
doubled.
years. Not quite, but close. So it has a real impact. And I just think that the benefits of tourism are not embraced enough by our economic development folks. So yeah, it's a great tool.
So Pam, you kind of alluded to this earlier about podcasting can be done really easily. You can do it yourself on your phone, but both of you all are using professional services. And I just wanted to ask you, why did you go that route? I mean, you could have done it even cheaper. And how does having professionals help you make everything possible?
Well, I think my first statement about my age and understanding this technology and how daunting that was certainly one of the factors that made this a no-brainer for us to start with. I had never listened to a podcast prior to starting working with you. So the idea of bringing a whole new technology into our office and trying to understand how to make it work was just daunting. And so the idea of being able to come to a place that was all-encompassing and that could really create a very high quality product, because I think if you create a lower quality product and then you try to improve that, you've lost them at the low quality.
Right.
So we need to go big on this kind of thing, and we need to start really, really strong, because people will pick out the idea of, I can hear that crackling in the background, or, oh, is that a train I just heard?
Yeah.
And none of that happens here. So number one was just your knowledge and your understanding of it was key for us to try and embrace. Number two, the quality of what you do and the way you do it. The fact that you help us to understand how to boost our listenership, the fact that you can edit out bad, the fact that you make it easy for our guests when they come in. They're freaking out. Many of our guests are just so scared of the idea of doing this. And when we continue to say, you can stop anytime, Cal will take that out. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about how many times you say, he will fix it. So just that comfort level is huge for our guests. And also, we have sponsors that we bring into our podcasts to do recording, who are sponsoring events we are doing in areas of our community. And when they come in, they're so impressed with all of this and how this looks. And it's a return on investment for them. And that's important for us to continue to grow our community, our events, our tourism. The dollars behind that, they're bigger than just room tax for us. So all of those things. Besides, we like you. You're nice people. You're fun.
Well, thank you.
But I think you've stepped up our game. The analytics you provide to us, the integration of getting the podcast on our website, on our Facebook page, all of those things are things that, yes, someone could figure out, but thank you, goodness, it's not me. And it's,
right.
This is...
And Mary, you mentioned you got an intern this summer. You're a very busy gal. I'm sure it helps to have a service for you.
It's not only helpful, it's absolutely critical. I do not have the time or the skills to do what you guys do to make this whole system work so seamlessly. It's hard enough fitting in the scheduling of the next guest and editing the show outline and then editing the episode. And those are all in little bits and pieces that I can handle. But you guys are doing the lion's share of the work there as far as the technology end goes to make it a quality product. And I just couldn't do it on my own. To have it be the same result as I get working with you guys, it's amazing.
Well, thank you for all those kind words to both of you.
The check is in the mail.
Let's dig into helping our guests that are considering podcasting, and we've got a lot of destination marketing organizations that do tune into this because I've gotten feedback from them. Give us some of the bad. What's the biggest challenge to doing this or getting started? Is it finding guests, booking guests? You mentioned earlier about sharing, Pam. What advice would be to somebody that's thinking about starting this? Would you give them about here's the not so good?
One of the challenges is to think big and think about what content you want, what information are you trying to share, what do you want people to know. And the things that you think are minimal aren't minimal. Just what Mary was talking about, the plein air show, that may not be a big deal to everyone, but it is a very big deal. And owning that and realizing that what's happening, the Giro de Grafton in Grafton is a huge deal. And embracing that as a podcast producer and figuring out how to make that a podcast worthy topic and giving credit to all of that. And then Ozaukee County is the smallest county in the state, and realizing that when you're in a small community within the smallest county, you have to own everything around you. Dan and I talked about this. We've met several times to talk about, is our well dry? Have we talked about everything there is to talk about in Grafton? And no, we haven't. But we get to own the Brewers. We get to own the Bucks. We get to own, other areas. We get to talk about, while I don't know that we would talk about the Ryder Cup or the Democratic Convention in full podcast, we still get to own those things because they will impact us.
Yeah, and you're close enough to those events to say the visitor doesn't care about where a county line is on a map or a city limit starts or ends, or who belongs to a chamber of commerce or doesn't.
Right. So selling our tourism entity, selling our village and the people that give us the room tax dollars, to understand that they can't all be Grafton businesses.
Right.
They can't all be hotels and be contributing to room tax. We have to go outside of our community boundaries to do podcasting that's relevant, and we will reap the rewards of all of it. But I would say, when you started, that was a hard sell with our municipality, having them understand, we're gonna do something for all of Ozaukee County. We're gonna invite guests that are not just Grafton businesses, and trying to get them to understand that they get it. It works. Everybody who comes and stays in our hotels is not here to stay in Grafton.
Right.
They're here to do a lot of things in a lot of places.
The Strawberry Festival, I don't know when this one's going to air, but was just a week ago from when we were recording this. And it's a neighboring community,
Right.
Cedarburg, but I'm sure your hotels in Grafton
Right.
were jammed. So,
Summerfest is 30,
Right, is happening
30
right
miles
now.
away, and
Right.
we are booked solid in all 3 of our hotels for the entire run of Summerfest.
right.
Nice.
Anything Harley does in Milwaukee, we are full.
It's
Right.
golden.
So, yeah,
It's like
so all of
the
those
Packers
things.
in Green Bay.
Exactly.
right.
So does every business benefit? No.
Yeah.
But do we see an influx of people relative to all of those
They're
things?
talking about those things.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right.
Just the fact that we have the shuttle for Summerfest in our community impacts every business on the
Yeah.
Eastern Corridor.
Mary, what have your challenges been?
Yeah, you're
Sure.
almost the exact opposite of
Right,
Pam. You got
right.
this huge county.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, so my challenges, I would say, are more with literally making schedules work for guests
Mhm.
and working through some of the technology things that we had to tackle, literally like as we were trying to record. And once we got those things ironed out, it's really more of a challenge. Like Pam was saying, planning for what your topics are going to be, how to make those topics relevant to your audience, and trying to think out into the future and just be organized. And having a spreadsheet has helped me immensely, I just have to say.
Content
And-
calendar, right?
Right. And you can look at what you've done and what you're going to be doing. So for someone who's thinking about doing a podcast, really take the time to think it through, make sure that it makes sense for what you're trying to do. Ask questions of people like Platypus and those of us who do podcasts, and then give it a shot. Some of it you just have to learn along the way.
Well, I want to thank you all so much for being our guests. What's the best way to connect with you if other
Somebody
destinations?
does, if
other destinations
would
might have.
want to learn more about what you're doing.
Sure, you can contact me, and this is Mary, through our website at travelbayfieldcounty.com. My info pops up on the right-hand side there, or through LinkedIn, either one.
I would say the same. Our website is grafton-wi.org. You can certainly email me straight through our website. I'm not a LinkedIn guru, so I would tell you don't do LinkedIn because you might not hear back from me for a while. But certainly, if you email me at pam@grafton-wi.org, I will get back to you as soon as I can.
And we'll put all of that content information in our show notes.
And of course, if you have any questions for Dan and me about today's episode, please feel free to contact us on our LinkedIn pages. Thanks for your support. If you like what you've heard, please don't hesitate to share, review, and subscribe to Brandstorm.
This is Dan Trzynski along with Nancy Christopher at Platypus Advertising and Design, an awesome company that creates perceptions that influence choice. We hope you'll join us next week for another episode of Brandstorm.